So, are you DTFF?
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
There we go. Back where we're supposed to be. Here we are, Tuesday night. You're joining us for another fantastic episode of the Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. We do appreciate it. We have got another fantastic, should I say, episode this evening.
Should. You have. You've said it. So now we have to live up to it. We have to find a way.
Yes. We're planning for the fantasy playoffs tonight and all things that are involved with that. But before we do that, Jake, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing so good. I'm still, my voice is still recovering. We didn't even talk about this before we went on air. We were talking about other things, but I was lucky enough to go watch the Packers and Rams game at Lambeau this weekend and watch that trouncing that
what a
Green
great
Bay
game to go
LA.
to.
It was incredible. The vibes were consistently great throughout that stadium for basically the entirety of the game. It was really something to watch.
Oh, it was fantastic to watch from home. I can't imagine what the atmosphere was like there, considering it's such a big game. Matt Stafford coming back to Lambeau, fighting for jockeying for playoff position. It was a very big game, and I'm glad our team stepped up to the challenge and rose to the occasion.
They needed to stop a skid. There's a little bit of a danger. Things had not been rosy in Green Bay here for a little bit, and so getting that one is a nice leg up. Now we get a bye week, so we'll address them as one of the teams at the end of this show that you shouldn't play.
Yeah, which is desperately needed for our hometown Packers because we were a little dinged up. Rodgers with this little piggy that went wee because it's falling off of his foot.
Went ow.
Although you didn't hear it because you weren't listening to the broadcast, but it was Troy and Joe Buck were doing the broadcast, and there, Joe was like, "Oh yeah, so it's just a pain management thing for Rodgers and his little toe, and he got a painkiller injection into his toe, and then he made some sort of offhanded comment about how his toe was vaccinated." It was great. I actually really chuckled at that. And my feelings on those two announcers. They are not my favorites, but I really appreciated that little offhand remark that he slid in there. That was great.
Well, that's nice. I mean, it doesn't make me pine for the broadcast and listening to them overall.
No.
But, it's nice that they can have moments to shine like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it like I said, it made me chuckle a little bit and made the broadcast just slightly less annoying. So we got that going for us.
Which is nice.
It is nice. Yes. So big news this week. Christian McCaffrey on IR for the season. All my home league fantasy hopes are walking a tight wire now. As along with, I'm sure, many other fantasy hopes out there for people. Very sad. So I'm just throwing this on you now here, Jake. Now, not for... I guess you could look at it for redraft and for dynasty. What does this do for Christian McCaffrey for you? Moving ahead for next season, obviously.
Yeah, so next season, say for redraft, of course, the question is now, well, is Christian McCaffrey still a top 3 guy, a top 3 pick? I mean, up in even the first injury, right? Wouldn't you have still said he was a top 3 pick after that first injury this year?
And I think people will say yes when he's healthy. That's going to be the caveat here. What do you think, though? The talent's undeniable. I don't think he's just going to lose it because he hasn't played. It's not like my virginity. It's not going to come back here if you don't use it. It's not going to grow back. Yeah. So talent is undeniable. Would you draft him? Say redraft is like our home league, just a standard redraft league. No, it's just PPR, no like super flex, tight end PPR, nothing like that. Right. Would you still take him 1 overall? or with
No.
with the top 5 pick, maybe?
Top 5 pick, yeah. I'm still
Okay.
very interested in him as a top 5 pick, but number 1, absolutely not. I can't do it.
So who would be your
I'm
number
not
one
an
then?
expert. I'm not an injury expert, first of all. So take that with a grain of salt, but I would be too scared. My number 1 overall would be Jonathan Taylor at this point. His role continues to grow the way that we thought it was going to be last year. Jonathan Taylor looks much more efficient even than last year, more decisive. Just he looks like a beast. And that makes him my current 101. Of course, things can change.
Well, of course. I'm like I said, I'm putting you on the spot here because not on our show sheet that we follow here.
Jeez, that we follow to a T meticulously.
I know.
No, would you take CMC as I'd say I could get him in my top 5. Can you get him in your top 3?
Top 3, maybe. I'd have to, my brain is kind of mush here, and I need to look at the actual running backs.
Who would it be? I mean, running backs alone, I would say yes, top 3. And overall picks, I think typically they tend to be running backs that kick off the drafts anyhow.
So here's some running backs, Jake. Tell me if you would draft CMC above them. So Derrick Henry going to be coming back from injury as well.
Yeah. And I was already nervous for his workload this year. Of course, I looked like an idiot. I think I would still take him above CMC.
Okay. Austin Eckler having a fantastic season.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about Zeke?
Nope.
No?
Nope. Will not. I'm worried about Zeke now finally hitting the wall.
Okay. What about Delvin Cook?
No. I mean, we're concerned about injuries. Dalvin Cook should be the poster boy still for running back injuries.
All right. And I'll give you one last one because we could play this game for a while here. Alvin Kamara.
It so depends on what they do with their quarterback situation. So like right now, let's say Taysom Hill is their quarterback next year because he should be based on the contract.
Yeah.
Then no, I would go CMC.
Okay. So he's close to your top 3, if not in there.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of guys not named at running back that I would probably work my way in there. And that's not even talking about rookies, of course, who can still obviously weasel their way into my brain space, which they haven't yet. Obviously. But like Najee Harris could be up there. DeAndre Swift would certainly be up there for me in that top 5. So we'll see. Nice.
And then just quick hit with Dynasty. Where does he fall as far as your Dynasty value goes? Or is he someone maybe you'll try to take a dip on this last couple years of injury and maybe try to get him at a discount and get him onto your team? Or if you have him, are you just trying to trade him and be out from underneath him? Just say, screw this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Get what you can.
I'm not trading for peanuts here. Like if you can get a good offer still, like a quality offer for him still, sure. You know,
so like two firsts. Is he worth 2 firsts?
Yeah. I still think he is. Okay. First round draft picks, they're still such a crapshoot. You know, I understand that they hit more than second round draft picks, but it is still a little bit of a crapshoot. And Christian McCaffrey, when he's actually healthy, he's so dominant. Yeah, 2 firsts, absolutely.
What about we'll just do one quick one here. A player that we are both not very high on, but is having a fantastic season, like Joe Mixon plus. Well, like Joe Mixon at a second, maybe, or a third.
I don't think you can get Joe Mixon plus for him right now. And so I don't think you can get it if you are currently rostering CMC. And I don't think you should offer it if you are looking for CMC. Joe Mixon, I'll eat crow. He's just good, and he should still be good. So talking redraft next year, just to bring it back, I think Mixon might be in the conversation to be above him for next year.
Interesting. My bias, I don't know if it'll let me do that. As we sit right now, of course. Off-season, lots of things happen in the off-season here. We're throwing together our rankings and, like you said, the draft, free agency, all that fun stuff. So, we'll see about that. So, yeah, that was kind of the big news here for the weekend.
Woof.
I know.
Just all bad news. Just here's the deal. This entire episode is supposed to be about planning for the fantasy playoffs. Just wrap your team in a bubble and really solid duct tape.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let them out of the house to play this week, and then you'll be fine because you'll have a healthy roster for the fantasy playoffs.
That's right. With luck, most of the players on your team are one of the 4 teams that are on bye this week, so they're not playing, and you just got to cross your fingers for a non-football contact practice injury here, and then your team will be set for the fantasy playoffs starting the following week.
You'll just have to take the loss this week.
Yeah.
That's the best strategy, right? I think we can all agree losing is the best strategy.
You come here for quality advice, folks.
Quality.
All right. Well, Jake, do you want to tell us what our beer of the week is here? You provided us with this lovely beer.
Yeah, this is the part I'm excited about.
I want to say we've had this on the show before, but I can't remember exactly because there's been, what are we, 130 episodes in here and 130 different beer reviews. So,
yeah, this is episode 127. And so this is at least the 127th beer. I mean, because we split duty sometimes too. We drink different. God damn it. That's so stupid, but it's always so funny. We're drinking from Third Space, from our good friends Third Space. We are drinking a Mocha Java Porter. We might have had this. It's out of Milwaukee.
I know I've drank this beer many times because it is just a solid, great beer. Like I truly enjoy this one so much.
Yeah, this is tasty. And there's nothing fancy like Third Space. It's just, look at it. It's just a can. It's just a simple design, a simple beer, but it's a delicious beer. And so we love it. And it's roasty, it's chocolatey. Yeah.
Coffee chocolate porter. I mean, and this is one of the better porters. Like usually for my taste, porters, when I have them, they're a little thin on the body. That's why I tend to go to stouts more than porters.
Tight.
Yeah. Where this one has, I don't know, it's got a nice mouthfeel. I love this. I love this beer. It's so good.
It's a big wide body porter, not like those little thin body porters that you're used to there.
That's right.
This has got some dumps on it. That's a positive description of a beer if I've ever heard one. I'm just saying, I don't even register what I'm saying right now because I'm dreading this next segment. That's all.
Well, you shouldn't.
Oh, I shouldn't dread?
No.
Okay.
Why would you?
Why? Well, why don't you explain to the listeners why I should not dread this segment?
All right. So we are coming to our beer bet payout from the bet we made last week. And if you do not recall, I will refresh you. So we had the who's who of guests on last week. So this was a 5-way bet. So we had Mike, we had JL, and we had Linda on. And myself and Jake. So there's your 5 people. So 5-way bet. The bet was Andy Dalton versus Jared Goff, PPR points. So Jake took Jared Goff, and the rest of us took Andy Dalton.
I want to retract. I want to retract what you said. I did not take Jared Goff. I was left with Jared Goff.
Well, as the bets go,
right.
You ended up with.
I just want that to be clear.
As the bets go, the person that throws out the bet doesn't get a choice on who they get to take.
And that's why you try and make even bets.
Right.
Because you can get shafted. Yeah.
That's right. So, and just to be clear, this was a gross bet to begin with. I didn't feel good about this one at all.
I relished in the grossness like an asshole. So I kind of do deserve this.
Yeah. So that being said, Andy Dalton, 16.78 points. Jared Goff, 12.84. Now, this is very gross. I don't feel good I feel a little good about this because I beat you in a beer bet, but I mean, 17 to 13 points. It's
not good.
Gross. That is
gross. They were both bad.
And that game was god fucking awful to watch. Oh my god.
Didn't watch it. And
you didn't miss a damn
wish
thing.
I had. No, I wish I had because I love those games where they're so bad that they're good. And I think that I could have found a way to like this game.
No, not only was it bad, you would have been pissed the entire time that your quarterback was doing so bad. And you knew you were going to have to do these shots. So you have 4 shots to do.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be taking them one right after another, just like in Super Troopers? when Mac at the beginning, he just lines up at the bar and takes those, or are you going to space them out over weeks here?
I'm not going to space it out over weeks. I'm going to space them out throughout the episode.
Okay.
But in the name of somewhat responsible imbibing here, I am, with your permission here, I'm not going to do full shots, but I'm going to do basically like 3/4 shots because I'm paying off 4 here throughout the episode. I don't want to die. That's all. I just don't want to die, Dustin. It's a simple request.
Well, you may not want to die, but I think the viewers want us to see you die.
How about this? How about
at least your insides die?
How about a concession? How about the first one that I do in your honor? I do a full-size guy,
okay,
and the rest of them are 3/4.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fair. As long as you're paying mine off first.
You son of a bitch. Yeah, I will pay yours off. And by the way, I'm drinking, I found a Smirnoff pomegranate vodka.
Ooh.
Deep in the depths, in the bowels of our liquor cart. So that's what I'm loading up here for yours. And Dustin, without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and let you know that you are a genius / fantasy football expert prognosticator. Cheers to you.
Thank you.
Hachi. What? That sucks. That pomegranate does not cover up shit.
It doesn't
from that
sound
garbage
good.
Vodka.
I'm just gonna tell you said pomegranate, and I'm like, that doesn't sound good at all. There's a reason why you found that one in the depths of the liquor cabinet.
Yeah, pretty sure somebody brought that over once upon a time, and we buried it because we
for good reason.
Should have buried it in the trash with Mike's awful sandwich take from last week, but
absolutely.
Lo and behold, that's a callback. That's a callback for the listeners.
And if you don't understand that, folks, go back and watch or listen to last week's episode, because we did have the sandwich expert on last week.
That's right. Well, let's get into something where I get to enjoy other people's misery. Do you mind?
Yeah, let's do our drunk trade of the week.
Drunk, hammered, drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
This one comes from Reddit user Lick a Chicken. Huh. Yep, exactly like it sounds. The format here, it's an 8-teamer. I don't know if we've ever had an 8-teamer. No disrespect to 8 teams. I just don't think that's come across our news desk here. But it's a super flex redraft league. Now, I picked this one because you led off at the top of the show with some news. And here's the context.
And before you get into it, I'll be honest, I didn't even read the drunk trade here before we started the show. So the timing of this is just coincidental.
It's so apropos, if I can use a $10 word. The context here is I traded CMC for Cordero Patterson a few weeks ago. This was in the throes of CMC's first injury, by the by. So here's a person wanted to get some production. We talked ad nauseum about Cordero Patterson and how good he's been. So the rest of the context, they say, may actually pay off now, but I was feeling real stupid at the time. I was very drunk. My commissioner called me and asked if I was okay. I told him we needed to spice things up because no trades had been done yet. So this is
I just want to say hats off to the commissioner for actually checking in on your GMs there, that just to make sure that they're okay. Like hats off to your commissioner there, because that is just tremendous commissioning work.
Are you okay? I saw the trade. Is everything fine? Now a little bit of extra context. He says they say I already had Darrell Henderson, Kareem Hunt, David Montgomery, and Elijah Mitchell at RB. So here's what I want to ask you. We obviously know now this trade looks brilliant because you get Cordero Patterson, who just keeps going off and probably is going to continue for the rest of the season here. Spoiler alert. But you look at that depth at running back.
I love it.
Did you need to move your injured running back CMC when you had all of these guys. Now, David Montgomery was just coming off an injury himself. Same with Kareem Hunt. But you had Darrell Henderson, you had Elijah Mitchell. And so are you just looking and going, I need some more bodies?
Well, we all know that the running back picture out there is very garbage, and
Sure.
you need all the depth you can get at this point. I mean, Hunt is banged up. Montgomery, as you said, was coming off an injury. Who knows what's ever going to be happening with that San Francisco backfield? Henderson's been going off and doing well. And you have to look at it too, that if he, this is redraft, so chances are he drafted CMC in the first round and early.
Right.
So the fact that your first round pick has been on the bench for this long, and you're now obviously hindsight, I mean, you're getting a running back one in return because Patterson's doing outstanding, especially in an 8-team league. I don't think that's a bad move. Obviously now it's turning out to be a terrific move, but
right.
I mean, with 8-team Superflex, all your everyone has stacked teams. That's just how it is. So you're trading what was at the time a potential game-changing RB1, the RB1 overall potentially, for a player that's playing well past his coverage, and Cordell Patterson. I don't think that was a bad move. I mean,
it was bold.
It's bold, and it's obviously paying off at this point because, CMC's out for the year now. So, I mean, yeah, at the time, maybe it was a little questionable, but at the same time, I mean, in an 8-team league, you got to make moves to try to win because everyone's team is stacked.
That's a great call out. And it's something that goes overlooked. I think some of the times in those leagues is like, it can get disenchanting too, because you look at everybody else's team and you see all these studs on everybody else's team, and it can almost be overwhelming. And so to my point though, trading away a stud like CMC is terrifying that in an 8-team league, because now, well, there goes my stud. And now looking at the rest of that running back depth chart, none of those guys are what I would have considered studs at the time, certainly. So aside, Cordell Patterson, of course, he was always fringe stud this year, but you were always waiting for the other shoe to drop too. And maybe still are with Cordell Patterson. I'm past that phase. I'm not waiting for that anymore.
I mean, Darrell Henderson is just outside of RB1 territory right now. So what is he? He's 13th overall. He's 1 point behind Alvin Kamara for the 12 spot. So, I mean, he's essentially an RB1 at this point. So, he's been fairly reliable now that, he started the season slow, obviously with injury, and has come back and has been doing awesome. But yeah, I mean, obviously the move turned out great for him. So I applaud you on this drunk trade. You didn't know what you were doing, but it all worked out well in the end.
Cheers to you and to the commissioner for just being a stand-up guy about the whole thing and checking in.
Commissioner.
And cheers to this person for kicking things off with the trades in the league. We know how frustrating it can be. Like, nobody wants to trade and it just gets stagnant. And so sometimes you want to shake things up, and this definitely accomplished that. So pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, before we go into our planning ahead, I do want to take this quick opportunity to let folks know this week's episode of DTFF is brought to you by Poor Richard's Farm Beef Snack Sticks. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Football on Sundays deserve good meat. It's good meat. It's great meat. Poor Richard's Farm 100% all natural beef sticks. Dustin, they're so tasty and you want them in your mouth. So head on over to poorrichardsfarm.com. You can get free shipping if you order at least 3 packs of these bad boys. You're going to want like 6, 9, 69.
Nice.
How many references can I fit into this thing? We'll see. But go over there seriously. They are so damn good and we love them. We know you'll love them. poorrichardsfarm.com. Do it today.
That's right. Thank you, Jake, for that. So,
you betcha.
Let's start planning for the playoffs here.
Okay, actually, real quick, I want to pay off another bet real quick before I get too headlong into this and I'm going to forget. So this one I'm going to pay off to Linda. This is from the beer bet. I'm paying off to Linda specifically. Linda, you are an amazing fantasy football prognosticator / genius.
Ooh.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
Now we
you
go.
are going to be a hurting unit for work tomorrow.
Okay.
And I am here for it. I mean, in spirit. Because I'm not the
Yeah,
one
not
that's going to have to deal with it. But
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm here for it.
I appreciate you.
Okay,
Okay, we can talk real things though.
Yeah. All right. So planning for the playoffs. So, Jake, we're 2 weeks here from the playoffs, or we should be, considering there's an extra week in the NFL. So if your playoffs start this week, your commissioner did not do a good job of adjusting for the increase in schedule here, because we still have 4 teams on bye. So you should find a different league then.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, though, week 14, a lot of people will probably still start playoffs just out of habit. Like, I know our home league is starting in week 14, and there are some teams on bye even on week 14, which is imperative to keep in mind here. But you could start week 14 or week 15, or if you're in a garbage league, then week 13.
Right. So that being said, I don't know where I was going with that. So I lost my whole train of thought. Yeah. Apparently,
here's
I've
a question.
Been drinking.
I'm just getting more with it the more I take on here. I have a question for you because we're going to talk about some specific players that we both like. Thanks, Hollywood. Hollywood in the chat says, "Go, Jake, go." I appreciate the motivation. I'm going to need it to get through the rest of this episode. So stand by, Hollywood, stand by. But I do want to say, we're talking about a lot of specific players that should help you in your playoffs. We're going to go through some guys. But in general, I think there's a strategy element that can get overlooked when we're talking about the playoffs. And I'm curious, do you have any differences in your strategy from the first weeks of the season, the first 10, 12 weeks, and now as you start to actually plan for the playoffs? Does anything shift in your mentality?
Real in redraft? No. I mean, really, it's... And part of that might just be a function of the only redraft league I'm in is our home league, where we have very specific and limited waiver wire transactions. So it's kind of like you're kind of stuck with the team you're drafted with, unfortunately. Sure. So really, no, I don't look. My strategy doesn't really change as far as redraft goes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
now, Dynasty is Dynasty now you're just looking even more, presuming the trade deadline has not yet passed in your Dynasty league, or is it just you hyper focusing on trades now?
Yeah. Basically, if I'm a real contender and I feel like I have a real shot of making some noise in the playoffs, or if I feel like I maybe need that one last piece to kind of push me over the edge, I will go out and trade aggressively for whatever piece that is that I think I need, and not mortgage the farm, but I would overpay slightly for the pieces I think I need to win the championship, because that's what it's all about. It's not about having the sexiest roster out there. It's about taking home some of that money and the championship trophy, and having your league dues paid for the next 5 years. I mean, who doesn't like that?
That's what you love. I wish somebody would do that for me, because I'm not going to do it myself at this point in the season. It's funny that you mentioned about the sexy rosters, because even in redraft, my strategy does change a little bit at this point. If you're in a team where, again, if you can still trade, in a lot of leagues that might have already passed, but if you can still trade, or even if you can't, there's going to be some guys on your squad that are really big in name recognition still at this point, and either have been underperforming a little bit for you throughout the season, but you wanted to hold on to see if things would change, or they've been doing good, but their schedule looks so terrible, or some set of circumstance changed for them, that now is the time where I'm considering, one, trading them if I can for the name value immediately, like trying to get the least sexy guys that I know will produce for the playoffs, or I think will produce for the playoffs. Or I'm dropping some of these guys as landmines for the rest of my league, knowing that the name value is so high People are going to be scrambling to pick them up. And that's going to, in my estimation, in my player evaluations, that's actually going to make their teams worse. There's a couple of names out there. Even in Allen Robinson, like if somebody's held on to him for this long, drop him and hope somebody else in your league says, Allen Robinson, he's probably better than my wide receiver 3. I'm going to pick him up. Knowing like you're not going to be starting Allen Robinson. There's no reason, but you can actively hurt somebody else's team by doing that sort of thing. And of course, Allen Robinson, probably not the ideal name right now that fits that bill, but there are plenty of other guys where I'm looking ahead at these schedules. I'm not liking what I'm seeing at all. Rather than just keeping them on my bench to rot, essentially, I'm dropping.
Oh, absolutely. No, for sure. And I'm actually doing that in our home league. I'm dropping a player that I haven't been starting, and I have no intention of starting here at this point. So I'm going to drop him, make a waiver claim, and well, hopefully it goes through. We'll see.
Right. Oh, Cortland Sutton. That's the name I was thinking of. Cortland Sutton's a great idea of that right now for me. Like his name value is still such where it's not completely tainted or tarnished by most of your league mates. But he hasn't been doing shit. I don't think he's going to be doing shit here the rest of the year. That's the type of guy, like, drop him. Be a landmine.
I'm not going to drop him from my team. Why would you say that?
Because he's going to be terrible. He's going to be terrible. And you're not going to feel comfortable starting him probably, but he's going to rot on your bench. Let somebody else deal with it and feel like they're getting a value. Feel like they got this gem on the waiver wire because he's a name still. And let them put him into their starting lineup and suffer the consequences of that.
I wish Denver had a better matchup. I'd change the bet this week from what I have to a Cortland Sutton bet.
Hey, do it. Do it, man. Just do it.
I want to, but there's nothing.
How about this? How about why don't we do a rest of season beer bet with Cortland Sutton involved?
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Switch it up a little bit. So like I'm looking back at his last few weeks. He hasn't hit double digits in the last few weeks, if I recall. Like I think you have to go all the way back to week 7, I think, before Cortland Sutton has double digit fantasy points. In fact, I'm going to pull that up right now. But I want that to be our dividing line. So I feel like we should use PPR points per game the rest of the season.
Okay.
And that way it accounts for any injury, all that.
Right.
Horse crap. Yep. Yeah, you have to go back to week 7 before he hit double-digit fantasy points. I'm going to say that he finishes with fewer than 11 fantasy points per game the rest of the way.
Fewer?
Yep. 11 or fewer. You feeling confident about this guy that shouldn't be dropped onto waivers?
I'm
calculating.
I'm just looking up their schedule here. That's all. I'm just looking up their schedule.
Okay. Here, I'll read it off to you. So they get Kansas City this week,
I'll
then
take
Detroit.
I'll take it.
Okay. Sounds good. So for our purposes, of course, we're going through the end of, I guess it'd be week 17 is probably the last week of
I think that's
anybody
fair.
playing him.
So week 13 through 17.
Yep. Fewer than 11 fantasy points. 11 or fewer. Yeah.
All right. I got to put this on the show sheet somewhere.
Fair enough. Well, the other thing I'll vamp here while you're adding our preliminary result there is last big picture thing before we get into the actual players that I think are going to be really helpful. Last big picture thing for me with the fantasy playoffs is you should have, not to harp on it too much, you should have eliminated name recognition from your databanks in week 5. The guys who were getting a pass because they'd done it before, because you expected big things coming into the season, because they are a big name, that has to go out the window. You cannot sit there in the fantasy playoffs and go, well, I know I should start Tim Patrick, but this other big name has such a hold on my heart because of what he's done in the past. That cannot play into your start sit.
To be fair, going off of what you said just about Cortland Sutton, it's like, he has that name recognition. He flashed a little bit early, hasn't done a ton lately, But if you have a better option on your bench, I mean, you can't just necessarily say start your studs. I use that in quotes. Right. Like you said, just and more of name recognition than studs. Obviously, if you have, say, Austin Eckler on your team and he's got a tough matchup, you're probably not going to sit him in lieu of another running back that you have that has a more favorable matchup for the week. That we're not saying that by any means, but
no,
for guys that have been struggling a little bit or haven't been producing as we'd hoped, yeah, maybe taking a chance on a player that maybe has a more favorable matchup with a little bit higher ceiling or upside for the week is not a bad call, especially if you're trying to push to get into the playoffs. Maybe your 6th seed in your league is awarded to the team that has the most points for on the season of the teams that are not in the playoffs yet. So maybe you need to score those points and get there. So, I mean, taking those chances is not a bad thing at this point in the season. Now is not the time to really play it safe, in my opinion. That's true. You want to get in and you want to try to dominate and intimidate the rest of your league by making these incredibly smart and savvy roster decisions.
Yeah, but also don't go overboard. Don't get stupid with it. People can get too cute at this point too because they overthink everything.
We're not. I think
what we're both saying. Yeah, we're both saying. Start your studs is not the way of the playoffs for me. I think people can get a little bit too caught up in that because you have to put studs in quotes. If they've been performing like a stud, yes, absolutely, that's one thing. If they have not, but they have the name of a stud, then no, you don't do that. So
that's right.
That's great. Well, do you want to kick us off in talking about somebody who you think can win folks their league?
Sure, I would love to. Let's start with Elijah Mitchell. So currently, Elijah Mitchell, I had this all pulled up earlier. He's currently running back 28 on the season. So he is a low-end RB2, but their schedule for the rest of the season looks really nice. They have a very favorable schedule. The running backs do, I should say, in San Francisco. And he's been performing well. The other running backs on the team are getting injured. Trey Sermon isn't getting played for whatever reason. Like, he is the lead back. And again, I'm using that in quotes for the people that are listening. Like, he is the quote unquote lead back of that team. And I think he's a sneaky start where you can ride him, maybe not as your RB1, but maybe as an RB2, or if you're looking for a good flex play, he can be someone that will give you some sneaky points to push you over the edge.
I love it. I love it so much that I'm going to talk about him a little bit later in the show. Elijah Mitchell is, again, he doesn't have the name. And I think it was, I want to say it was Ray GQ who put this up on Twitter today, where if Trey Sermon was doing the things that Elijah Mitchell was doing, everybody would be losing their minds.
Because the draft
coming
capital.
Into the season. Yeah, it's draft capital. Trey Sermon's the guy. Oh, look at this rookie going crazy. But because it's this bright guy with no draft capital that nobody really wanted to be the lead guy and very few projected to be the lead guy, now they're batting an eye at it. And so I love it. I think he's going to have huge weeks.
All right, Jake, what about you? Who's your first one here?
I'm going to venture into icky territory. So brace yourselves, listeners. Derek Carr. There. I got it out of the way. I said the name. I ripped the Band-Aid off. Now let's have a discussion about him. He's been much better still than people give him credit for fantasy
He has been
football.
Fantastic this year.
It's the same. It's the Kirk Cousins thing a little bit, isn't it? Like, doesn't Kirk Cousins also always outperform expectations
every season?
Fancy.
Every season.
It's the same with Derek Carr. These two guys just cannot, and I'm as guilty as anybody, but people cannot get over the names Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. And it's just gross. And you don't feel confident drafting them. You don't feel confident starting them most weeks. But Derek Carr has been QB 14 up until this point. He's been very reliable. He only has 2 stinkers where he really hurt you. That was week 5 against Chicago, 8 fantasy points. and week 11 against Cincinnati with just under 10 fantasy points. Otherwise, he's at least had 16 fantasy points in every other single matchup. He's crossed 20 points in 6 of his 11 matchups. More often than not, he is actively helping you win your week. And he gets a pretty solid schedule. I mean, starting this week in week 13 against Washington, who, to be fair, this past week made Russell Wilson look like the worst option on the planet up until like the last drive of the fourth quarter. But Russell's been putrid since he came back from that finger injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's the matchup. I think it was just Russell, because they are allowing the most points to opposing fantasy quarterbacks. And then you have Kansas City, you have Cleveland, you have Denver in week 16, which is the only questionable matchup that he has. And then Indy in week 17. All of these teams are at least in the top half of points allowed for your opposing quarterback. So favorably, they're all basically favorable matchups. And this is a guy who could very well be out on waivers for you right now. Certainly in one quarterback leagues, I think that's incredibly feasible. Maybe if people like to hold two quarterbacks in your leagues, maybe he's clogging up a roster somewhere. But if he's out there, I think you should pick him up, because even when the matchups haven't been that great, he has been.
Sorry, yawning there. Because you're boring me, Jake. You
Jesus,
bore me,
man.
You bore
I know
me.
Derek
with
Carr's not a
Derek
sexy
Carr.
name, but fuck, man. Here, why don't I liven things up? This one is going out to JL. You are an amazing fantasy football prognosticator / genius. Cheers. That's number 3. That's 3 thus far, shooter.
Well, Jake, while
These
you're
aren't even
recovering,
full, guys, and I'm hating it.
well, while you're recovering from that, I'll talk about my next player here. That's Michael Gallup. Now, yes, he's been injured for a good chunk of the season here. We haven't seen him, but since he's come back, he's been producing. And yes, I know what you're going to say. Well, Amari Cooper's been out. CeeDee Lamb's had the concussion. Like, he's been by default the number 1 option or number 2 option. Doesn't matter. We saw the 3 of them play very well last year together, and they were all very fantasy relevant players. They, meaning the Dallas Cowboys, have a fantastic schedule to end the season here, with a lot of really solid, good matchups. And he's been getting targets. And I know, again, this is because, Cooper and CeeDee have been out or injured and haven't been playing, but the last 3 weeks since he's been back, 8, 10, and 5 targets. Gotta love that. He's catching a lot of balls. He's averaging at least 40 yards per game. This last week, obviously with Thanksgiving, we saw him blow up for over 100 yards. Hasn't gotten the touchdown column yet, but if he adds a touchdown a game or every other game, I mean, that's gonna push you over the edge. And I think he's not someone that people will be thinking of. He's probably sitting on someone's bench right now because they're not going to be starting him because they don't believe in him. I think if you're allowed to trade yet, I think he could be someone you could probably get on the cheap that will be able to help you moving forward.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can see a world where either one of those prominent receivers remains out for an unspecified amount of time, and that's always huge because, like you said, when Cooper's out, when CeeDee's out, that's big time. And even if they're not, then you're still going to be having a solid floor. So you have a solid floor mixed with this amazing shot at upside.
That's
right.
What
the playoffs are all about. So I freaking love it.
Thanks, Hollywood.
Hollywood
says, I love Gallup as a playoff winner. Boom.
Boom. Mic drop. No, I really do. I really do buy that. This next guy he's become a name. He's become a big name in the last few weeks. And so because of that, it might be tough to get him. But I'm banking this off of a disappointing performance this past week. Elijah Moore, rookie wide receiver for the New York Jets. he had a stretch where he was just tearing it up. He was a top 4 wide receiver, I believe, in the previous 4 weeks, not including this past week. I might have even been higher than that, honestly. Basically, the dude, once Zach Wilson went down with his injury, and that quarterback was out of the way, that rookie quarterback was out of the way, he had a cavalcade of guys stepping up. He had Joe Flacco, had Josh Johnson, he had Mike White throwing him the ball. Just a real who's who of future Hall of Famers chucking the ball to him. But when that was happening, he was absolutely crushing it. Now, this last week, I say it's a disappointment because he finished with 9.3 fantasy points. You know, did it kill your week? No, but it certainly didn't serve you incredibly well. But he had 8 targets. He had 8 targets in this game. In his previous games with Zach Wilson, he'd only hit that once before Zach Wilson went down with the injury. What we were all hoping is that Zach Wilson was watching from the sidelines while these other quarterbacks were chucking it to Elijah Moore and great things were happening, and maybe said, I should do that. When I get back in there, I'm going to take a cue from these guys, and I'm going to throw it to Elijah Moore. And that still seems to be the case. Mm-hmm. A good matchup against Houston, you would have expected a lot more fantasy production, but the targets were there. And he has shown previously that he can find the end zone. In the previous 3 games, he had 4 touchdowns. He can definitely do that. I still believe he can do that with Zach Wilson there. Now, the schedule is interesting. He plays Philly in week 13. Then he gets New Orleans, and it's not going to be great.
That's dicey.
You're going to have to hold your nose through that one, and hopefully you can spare him that week and put him on your bench and have somebody else in your lineup. But then he gets Miami. Then he gets Jacksonville. Then he gets Tampa Bay. Those matchups are really good for wide receivers. Tampa Bay, nobody wants to run against. So even though they might not seem like the easiest matchup, Zach Wilson's going to have to be throwing that ball all around the field. It's the week before. Now, Tampa Bay may lock up their playoff bye at that point, just depending on how things shake out. That could make things interesting, but either way,
I don't think so.
The schedule's good. You don't think they will?
No. I think they're too far back at this point because there's only the one bye this year with the expanded playoffs. So I mean, it's going to be tough for them unless things really break their way. They would have to win out, and obviously teams ahead of them would have to lose a couple of games here. So I don't see that. I mean, it's a possibility. I just don't necessarily see that happening.
But that's good. That's good for Elijah Moore because you want Tampa Bay to be throwing it, putting up a lot of points so that the Jets have to respond in kind and get those garbage time points for you.
Absolutely. Jake, do you have anyone else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I do have. No, yeah, I have a couple of names that I want to hit on here. And again, some of these are going to be obvious. And I want to get the obvious ones out of the way because they feel obvious to me and they may not be obvious. I don't know, depending on your thoughts about handcuffs, I suppose. But Dalvin Cook, we talked about the injury with Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
It's not season ending as of right now. It could turn into that. So right now, I believe the timeline is just a couple of weeks that he's fully expected to be out. Could be back after a couple of weeks. We know how these things work, though. And especially with Dalvin Cook, love him. But the guy just has the worst luck with injuries. So if Alexander Madison is still an option for you, then you have to go get Alexander Madison. And in my mind, he's actually worth paying up for. In terms of trade equity for a redraft league, whatever that means. Again, some of these big names you can probably trade for Alexander Madison. So with when he filled in this past week, he was great. He found the end zone almost immediately. He had 3 targets, which is nice to see. He had a really good baseline as soon as Cook was out of the game. He has another great schedule. Well, he gets Detroit in week 13. So that's your automatic. Right. That's your stardom no matter what. And just enjoy the points rack up.
That's right.
And then he gets Pittsburgh. Has not actually been awful for opposing running backs because
no.
teams
Pittsburgh's
are
been
able to
struggling.
put the scores up. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're able to put scores up on Pittsburgh pretty quick, and they're not able to fight back. And so game gets out of hand, game script makes it really enticing for the opposing running back. Chicago in week 15, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, they're
I'm
not a
that
scary
scared.
defense.
No, sometimes you see these names and you go, I don't want to do that. But they have not been that great. So I have no issues with that. The Rams in week 16. Would have thought, again, that's a bad matchup. And they have Von Miller now in that defense. We saw just this past weekend, in fact, we saw that teams can run it up on them. And Kirk Cousins, we said, is a much better quarterback than people have been giving him credit for. He can put up points for that team and turn that game script favorable for Madison again. And then week 17, he gets the Packers. We're better than we've been against the run in years past. So we are not a gimme, but there's no terrifying matchup here for Alexander Madison. So I love him. And also another guy in that vein is Kareem Hunt. So Kareem Hunt now back from injury, has one of the best season end strength of schedules of any running back. And obviously Nick Chubb is going to be the biggest beneficiary of that.
Right.
We know this. But Kareem Hunt is going to have plenty of opportunities.
Plenty involved. Yep. Absolutely.
So I do love him. Dare we talk about a tight end?
You can dare.
Do we want to do that?
No, but should we? Sure.
Okay. One guy that I want to get on here because I think he deserves my respect at least, because I was not favorable to him coming into the season. It's Logan Thomas, tight end for the Washington football team. I didn't believe it. I thought last year was a fluke. He was amazing last year for fantasy. And I just said, basically he's the 1-year wonder type of tight end. He's not going to have consistent production like people expected. Well, we never got to see that because he got injured right away. But before he got injured, the dude was doing really well. I mean, for tight ends, as far as tight ends go, he didn't have a single bad game in the 3 games that he got to play at the start of the season. And then his first game back from injury against the Seahawks, Washington didn't whip the football around. They didn't throw it a ton, but he still got his. He got 3 catches. He was definitely on a snap count in his first game back. He played, I believe, just 3 quarters of the snaps. He was playing 100% of snaps in his first 3 games. I think you're going to see him get closer to that as he gets his feet back under him. First game, shake the rust off, and now he has great matchups.
And it would have been even a better return game for him, but he had that touchdown that was called back. So, I mean,
oh God, yeah. Yeah, which was a bullshit call, by the way. If you saw, it was very clearly crossed the plane. He was in the end zone catching this ball. He fell to the ground. He had his arm under him. The ball moved, and they're just like, nope. We got to keep things interesting for the bookies. We're gonna let the Seahawks get the ball back for one more drive and see what they can do. Almost put that game into overtime doing that, by the way. But I agree. He should have had a touchdown. It's nice to see him get thrown to in the red zone.
Yep.
But he has Las Vegas this week, which is an abomination against tight ends. There's always one team every year who just sucks against tight ends. They can't do anything. That's the Raiders this week. So that's great. Now, once the playoffs kick off, it's Dallas, it's Philly, it's Dallas, it's Philly. It's literally, he gets them back to back to back to back. They just alternate for those 4 weeks. And they're all good matchups for him. His usage is going to be there. 6 targets in his first game back from injury. You love it. So if you're
very
struggling,
encouraging.
If you're struggling at tight end like most of us are, then go get him.
Nice. I love that. That is a good way to end that segment, Jake. Thank you for ending that on a high note. I like that.
We did it.
So let's start to close this out here. Let's do our start of the weeks. First, we'll recap last week, and I'll quickly go through everybody's start of the week here on our Thanksgiving Spectacular show. So we had Linda. Her start of the week was Darnell Mooney versus Detroit. She predicted a top 25. Actually finishes wide receiver 15 with 17.5 points. Yes. Woo! Good job, Linda.
Nailed it.
Mike, Ty Johnson versus Houston, predicted top 10, finished as RB48 with 4.2 points.
That's less good.
Swing and a
That's
miss.
good, Mike.
Sorry. JL, Michael Gallup versus the Raiders, finished wide receiver 19, 15.6 points.
Very respectable.
That's respectable. Jake, you had Gronk versus Indy, predicted tight end 1, actually finished as a tight end 2, so that's really disappointing. Had 19.3 points.
This son of a bitch, Jack Doyle, outscored him by like half of a point. What's that? What's that about?
Well done, Jake. I'll give you props for that. That was good. And then I had Miles Sanders versus the Giants, finishes RB36 with 7.4 points. I loved hearing that Boston Scott was getting all those carries. That made me super happy the entire game. So, yeah, did not do so well on that either.
It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks. You can't trust them. It's like the Eagles are becoming the new New England, and it's not fun.
It's gross.
Not fun to deal with.
All right,
we'll do better this week.
That's right. So move on to this week. Jake, who is your start of the week?
I'm not going to dwell on it because you spent a good chunk talking about this guy, rightfully so. It's Elijah Mitchell. He gets to play the Seahawks this week. If you were lucky enough to watch what Antonio Gibson did to the Seahawks on Monday night, you would have no qualms starting Elijah Mitchell this week. I think what is important to talk about here is he's going to lead this backfield. It's happening. So Trey Sermon is not a factor. We saw Deebo Samuel be the number 2 running back for that team, and he's hurt now, which we didn't talk about, and it sucks. Deebo's going to miss, it seems like, at least 2 games here coming up. We hate it. The dude was just having the most dominant season. I wanted to see him finish it out super strong. Fingers crossed that he does come back after that couple-week absence, and it doesn't stretch out into that. But anyways, all that means is all those rushing attempts that were going towards Deebo Samuel, I don't think they're going to anybody else. I'll be honest. I think it's going to be Elijah Mitchell and pretty much only Elijah Mitchell. Against the Seahawks, they're allowing the second most points to running backs, so that's good news.
Absolutely. My start of the week, Darnell Mooney versus Arizona. The dude is just on fire these last few weeks. He has 17.5, 23.1, 20.6, 12.4. Had a clunker against Tampa Bay, then 15.5. Another clunker, 18. I mean, this guy has been producing so well, especially, like I said, these last few weeks. It seems like him and Fields have / Dalton. I forget Dalton's in there too. He's gained the trust of the team and his quarterbacks. He's coming into his own in the second season here. Someone has to step up with Allen Robinson being out. I use that in quotes. Right. Basically giving up on the season. So yeah, he's been stepping up. He's taking over that number 1 role in that offense, and it's showing. I don't think at this point, I know the matchup against Arizona isn't one of the best options out there this week, but you how can you say that he's not going to produce for you? He's got to stay in the flames. You got to stay in the fire, and he is on fire right now. So my start of the week.
Love it. I love it. I think I'm going to go out of a limb, and I'm going to say that ours are both going to finish inside the top 20. Well, I'm going to say mine's going to finish inside the top 10, and yours going to at least finish inside the top 20. Is that
That's fair? I like that.
Yeah.
I like that call.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
And you know what? I'm so confident in Elijah Mitchell finishing inside the top 10 that I will put myself on the line for a beer bet if he doesn't. That's right.
I'll join you for the top 20 for Mooney. Look at that.
Yeah, we stand by our calls, especially at this point of the season. They're so important. We want you guys to know that we do believe in them. We're not just spitballing here. We believe in these guys. So I like that Darnell Mooney gets the back-to-back shout-outs on our show from last week to this week. Keep that flowing. Now, Dustin, talking about beer bet.
Yep.
have you decided on this week's?
I did. I did. I came up with one. Here it is. I don't even have anything to preface it with. I was going to
Okay.
try to sugarcoat this and make it
Not going to wax
sound more
poetic.
exciting. Yeah. Well, you should know that's not me, but so here it is. Brandon Cooks versus Michael Pittman Jr. this week. More receptions. Who's going to have more receptions?
Oh, just receptions.
Just receptions. Switch it up a little bit this week.
Ooh. Well, I'm not going to look up previous stats because that's cheating, I think, at this point. I'm not going to be that guy.
I was looking at it ahead of time because I wanted to see if this was going to be a fairly even bet, just not pulling something out of my ass here. And it's closer than you would think it is. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these guys are the only true wide receiving options on their respective teams. So I actually love this bet because it's one and the same. Really, they are 1A and 1B of their own teams, or 1 and 2 and 3 and wide receivers of their own teams. Like there's nobody else there. T.Y. Hilton, I don't know. Have we even heard if T.Y. Hilton is going to be back?
He scored a touchdown this last week.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, good for him. I shouldn't write him off like that then, I guess. But regardless, it's impossible for me to back away from my dude, Brandon Cooks, who I've been hyping up all offseason. He's had a couple of disappointing weeks here, and I would love to see him right that ship. So I'm going to put the juju out into the world. Brandon Cooks for me.
All right. Hollywood's taking Pittman, so thank you, Hollywood, for going with my side here. I do appreciate that. And he says, also, Jake needs to end the show with a full shot.
Oh, my God. Well, I do have to pay off Mike's yet. He's the last. Of course, I saved Mike's for last because I feel like after the shit show he produced last week, he deserves to be last out of this group. So
Hollywood, this is just for you. Thanks for joining the show and being so active in the chat there.
Yeah, this is not for Mike. So no, I have to give Mike props.
You
to
do.
him. He was damn entertaining.
You can't do him dirty like that.
I wouldn't. I love Mike. I hope he knows that I just like to give him shit. All three of them were so incredible last week. I'm honored to have to pay off beer shots to them, or shots to them, I'll say. So to Mike, you are an amazing fantasy football prognosticator / genius. Cheers. And to all of the three gets from last week, go fuck yourselves for making me do that.
Well, Jake,
No, I
you
love you guys.
are a better man than I am for doing those all in one show. I don't know that I would have spaced it out over a couple of weeks here.
I've barely touched my beer. I'll be honest. I've barely touched this beer.
And you're barely going to touch it until your head's going to go touch the pillow after this, and you're going to have a nice sound sleep tonight.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, Jake, I'll close out the show here so you can recover from your shots and you can go nighty-night. One of the last times we're getting close to the end of the season here where we can say this. Check your waiver wire for drop players, folks. You never know who is going to get dropped. We do have 4 teams on bye this week: Carolina, Cleveland, Green Bay, and Tennessee. So please do not start any of those players because they will score you 0 points, which is not what you need as you're trying to roll into the playoffs this week. So other than that, folks, thank you so much for joining us and listening in. If you do us a favor, go give us a rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps people find us better. And if you enjoy the show, you should share it with others and share the love since you love the show so much, if that made sense.
Yeah, that made 1000% perfect sense.
So until next week, folks, good luck this week with the final playoff push here. If you have any final playoff push questions, hit us up on all of our social medias. You can find the show at Drinking Fantasy on Twitter. Hit our DMs there. We will answer you. You can find Jake at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter. You can find me at FF Dusty Dog. And until next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.